Hi friends, so welcome to yet another session on success factors, and here we'll be discussing about the where clause, how we can specify a where clause in a compound employee API, and what all parameters could be included in a where clause on in the success factors compound employee API. So first of all, why do we require a where clause? So as the name suggests, where. So we are specifying here the conditions are basically also known as the select parameters, as we understood earlier, which we can place over here, and the certain employees would be selected out of those conditions. So basically, the where clauses serves as a list of parameters or list of conditions that we are going to specify, based on which the certain employees would be a part of the outputted response from the compound employee API. So going through the slide points over here, let me take a pen, please. Yeah, so now coming to another constituent of CE request, which is where clause. So the where clause in the compound employee API query request specifies the conditions that employees need to fulfill in order to be included in the query result. All right, so it is basically the set of conditions which are there specified in the query so that it could select out the respective employees to be outputted. So the where clause consists of sub-expressions which can be combined by logical operator and. Okay, so these are the sub-expressions, and the logical operator and is operative over here. We cannot have multiple different type of logical operators like or basically not. No, that is not supported over here. Only the and logical operator is supported over here. All right, so a sub expression is made up of field, operator, and values. So basically, we are going to define in a where clause certain conditions. Now, what are the conditions? They are constituting of a particular field, for example, user ID. So where user ID equal to the name or the user ID, basically 103200 for an example. So this is a one form of an expression. So which included a field, which was the user ID, which included an operator, which was equal to, and which included a value, which was 103200. So a subset expression is made up of field, operator, and value. The compound employee API does not support expressions with complex conditions on several fields and different logical operators. So as I just mentioned to you that okay, different logical operators are not supported over here. So only the logical operator and is supported to be specified within different expressions. And also the compound employee API is not that as flexible as a SQL query wherein you can put any column of a particular table onto which the query is executed, or a particular join on which a query is executed. It basically restricts the number of the select parameters or the condition parameters based on which an employee could be selected, or in layman terms or in the straightforward terms, which could be placed in the where clause. So there are only limited number of, and those are some of the supported select parameters that we are going to discuss upon. So first of all, before going further, let's have a look at the select clause, basically, oh sorry, the where clause, how it looks like. So herein we have specified a where clause, right? So we had executed a select a compound employee API which included the select and then the and then the parameters, the segments and the subsegments which we wanted in the output response. Then we said from compound employee, right? We said from compound employee, and then the where clause. So in the where clause, we are putting where user ID in 103200. So user ID is a supported field in the compound employee API, which could be put in the where clause, and in is the operator. Here we also need to take into consideration here that okay, for the respective fields there are some selected parameters. It's not that okay, in is going to support, or in operator is going to be supported across all the parameters that are supported in success factors or the where clause. No, so for particular field there are also the limited operators that could be placed with that particular field. So that is what we are also going to understand here in this particular section. And then here we are putting in the value. So this was one expression, and so this is the operator and. We cannot put over here something like or, right? No, that is not supported. So let's try to execute it. First of all, I need to make sure whether the session ID. Okay, let's see what the error is. It's invalid session. So I need to get in the new session ID. So let's get the new session ID here. I executed a login call, gather the new session ID, the token that will work for authorization and authentication, get into the particular query window, and then we place it in the session ID against the J session ID is equal to the session ID in the header cookie. So, and we try to execute it now, and then we get an error. The SFQL is too complex. It says you can only use the following operators and equal to, greater than, equal to, and this thing. So herein, or as we mentioned, is not supported. So it has to be an and. All right. So herein we executed that, and then now the output is written fine. So going back to the slide points. So now, so the question comes here is, so what are those parameters which are supported to be placed in the where clause for the Compound Employee API? The answer is again given by the metadata document that we understood earlier. So the metadata document, the first virtual segment, specifies all the fields that could be placed in the where clause. So if you go back to the output of the uh, basically, let's take the describe X call, describe extended. So in that, the first segment is basically, so person ID, external person ID, UID. So these are all the first segment, right? This is what's constituting the first segment, first virtual segment rather, because there is no hard-coded boundary which is there in that particular response as we discussed earlier in the previous sessions. So these are all the parameters which are supported. So now at the time of publication of this particular session, there were around 29 operators. So these have been mentioned over here in this particular slide, and there are 29 where clause parameters. Those are supported in the SuccessFactors Compound Employee API. And this is the list which is gathered entirely from the metadata document. All right, so coming further, so this is one thing that, okay, we get to know what are all the supported fields or the supported parameters which could be placed in the select clause. And just to name a few, just reading through some of those. So it is person underscore ID, per person, per underscore person underscore UID, then it is person underscore ID underscore external, then there is last modified on, we have company territory code, department, job code, pay group, we have compensation, pay group, division, business unit, location. We have got the employee class, effective end date, start date, from date, to date, select from date, select to date, snapshot date, user ID, source of record, application content type, application target system, is contingent worker. This is one of very important fields which is here, hiring not completed. Basically why I highlighted this, because this is also at the same time important field it is, but at the same time it is quite underrated field as well. So this is also we will be discussing in the upcoming sessions in quite good detail. And then we have the employment information company, employment information country. So these are the 29 select or the where clause parameters. Those are supported. Now, so we understood that, okay, these are what is an so in the where clause we can specify an expression. Now an expression constitutes of a field. We understood that there are 29 fields. Expression constitutes field and then the operator. So now for a particular field there are certain operators which are supported, and we cannot generalize in a way it has been generalized in the SQL query that, okay, against any of the columns you can specify any of the operators equal to, not equal to, less than, greater than. But herein, for every field, there are certain well-defined set of operators that those could go with those particular fields. So here is this particular slide, which basically brings out that information to you, and precisely that, and this information is also gathered from the metadata document. So if you go back to the metadata document over here, and we, let's say, look into the for an example, the company field. So it has got this particular section, supported operators. So supported operator is equal to and n. This information about the operators is not present in the describe call that you make to the success factors, and basically the describe call only includes the information about basically the data type and the whether it is required or not. No, that is fine. So this is about the company that it includes, but the describe X call includes a lot more details. All right, so looking at that, we get to know that, okay, these are, okay, so first of all, this is a list which I have mentioned only for 21 out of 29. So, so the rest of the 8, so we have the 29 total parameters which are supported. Here I'm showing only the 21 because the 8 parameters, so those generally comprise of some special keyword parameters. For an example, last modified on, start date, then we have from date, to date, select from date, select to date, we have effective end date, we have snapshot date. So these are some of the 8 parameters that we are going to discuss, and those, for them, the dedicated sections have been placed in this particular session. But for these 21 parameters which are a bit more straightforward than those 8 ones, so these are going to be immediately discussed in the upcoming sessions, and those 8 would be discussed in the dedicated sessions as well. So, and also not all the 21 parameters we are going to discuss. We are going to discuss the important ones out of these, and I have already tried to include as many as those possible, which could be included in the sessions, so that and all the information that I have at your end, I am able to propagate it to people. So now herein we have the these parameters. Now here, one more important thing that we need to take into consideration here is, so let's take an example of the person ID. Okay, so first of all, so we have, for the company, we have the supported operator equal to and in, where the support in operator, whether it supports in operator, yes or no. So true is mentioned against it. Whether it supports like operator or not, the false is mentioned against it. Okay, so here in this particular slide tells you about all the operators which are supported. So for an example, you can see hiring not completed. So this is one of the parameters select which could be placed in the where clause, and it only supports equal to, it does not support in. All right, so here in for an example, we see that, okay, department, it supports both equal to and in. So most of the operators supports both equal to and in operator, except for a couple of those that are being mentioned over here. Now, one important thing that comes into the consideration over here is, like, there are some of the fields which I have highlighted in the blue here. So person ID, person UID, person ID external, user ID. So let's take person ID. So if we go to the metadata and see what are all the supported parameters for person underscore ID field, we get to see that, okay, these are equal to and n. So herein, when we come back, we see equal to n and not in is also specified. So that is true. So for some of these parameters wherein I've specified here not in operator is also supported, but that is not shown up in the metadata document. All right, so this is out of the experience that I've gathered executing these queries. I have placed this particular information over here. So if you go back here and try to execute it for, let's try to execute one of the query, the Compound Employee API query. So let's first of all take the session ID one more time. Okay, and now we go into the Compound Employee API query, so which is here, and we place in the JSession ID as the one we took in, and instead of user ID in, we specified not in. Okay, and we execute this particular query. Yeah, because we have placed in not in query, it takes some more time than that of the in clause. So, and herein we get all the user IDs and basically all those employees which supports or which meets these two criteria. So all of them have been mentioned over here. So num results have been 200, and it has got more results as well. So that is true as well. All right. So here it is the case. All right, so when we go back here now, and if we try to, so person ID, per person UID, person ID external, and user ID. So all these 4 parameters support not in. Now, if we try to see for company, so let's say company, we place it in the parameter as company instead of user ID, and we place company with a not in operator, let's say 1710, and we try to execute this particular call, and let's see whether, okay, so we get an error which says the SFQL is too complex, not in operator is not supported for column company. All right, so this is how this particular information could be used to basically specify the various operators to be placed in the where clause. All right, so this was all the information about how a where clause could be constructed. And in the upcoming sessions, we will go into more details of the where clause. And before going to the where clause, each of these select parameters for the where clause, we would quickly understand why an order by has been placed and how an order by clause could also be constructed.